Hello everyone, it's Simon from TradeRoomPlus.com, and I'm going to be the guest analyst for Eightcap over these coming weeks. So we're going to be having a look at some of the markets that I am interested in, and some of the analysis that I do, and some of the ways that I trade. And I've been trading in my live trade room all the way since 2013. And yes, I do have a plaster on my forehead because as I was setting up my lighting, I managed to smash it in my head. So we'll also have a nice adventure together to see how many times I managed to injure myself. Right. Here's my charting setup on the left-hand side. I'm going to go through all the sort of markets that I like to trade and look at trading, have a look at some of the levels, some of my analysis. First things first, I am quite a technical trader. I'm not that interested in sort of news or macroeconomic news because the time frames that I trade on, I can trade all the way down from a 5-minute time frame all the way up to sort of an hourly time frame, daily time frame to look at swing trades. Macroeconomic news doesn't particularly interest me. Of course, something like NFP, I won't trade over the top of it because I don't want to get myself in bother. But generally speaking, I think the price action is what shows me is going to happen in the market, and that's why I focus primarily on price action. So let's start by having a look at the FTSE 100. We'll just come out onto the daily time frame, really. I like to have a look at the longer term picture, the longer term trend. Now, the FTSE has probably been the weakest market in terms of recovery since the pandemic. I mean, you know, we'll have a look at some of the US markets. You'll see exactly what I mean in that respect. I mean, if we take a much larger sense of perspective, let's get a few more units on, we can see how much of the pandemic, how much we fell off here, and just how slow this recovery has been. Very sideways range until we started drifting up to this upside. Now, if we zoom in a little bit closer here, this was a massive level for us down at 6822 that we have rejected. So now the question is whether we can start approaching these all-time highs again. We double topped to the absolute tick there when it was the 10th of February as well. Beautiful shorting opportunity. So what I've got to try and infer is what will the market do if it gets back up there again. Now, every time the market's been up here, let me just sort my pen a second, every time the market's been up here, we've found selling momentum. So what we've got to sort of figure out is what's more likely than not to happen if the market does reach these levels again. I mean, I would suggest the market is going to come up here and find some resistance. So what we want to do is potentially, on a daily time frame, have a bit of a sell zone here. We can just draw that and give it a little bit of a red colour, which indicates the sell zone as well. And we are some distance away from that, although it'll only take a couple more bullish days in order to get us in there. So for me on the FTSE, I'm interested in selling all the way if we enter this zone. And we can look at different types of entry. The first one would be the first touch where the market comes up and then we just basically sell it down here. The second one would be if the market comes into this zone, we might be interested in selling it. And then the third one is potentially waiting for the market to enter the zone, coming back out of the zone, and then we have a very clear stop loss. I mean, I would have my stop loss comfortably above this level anyway, in case we get what's called a fake out, where the market rallies, it comes up, starts trapping all the buyers into the market, and then comes down, and which is very, very common in index markets, sort of fake outs like that. So that's what really interests me on the FTSE on the daily time frame. If we just pop down to this hourly time frame, then we have some areas of interest as well that we could potentially look at. Now, the index markets have been quite tricky this week. I've not really enjoyed trading them, but then that is the nature of trading. It's not always doing exactly what you want it to. I think if we really come in here and just sort of expand, then this is the level I'm going to be looking for next week on the UK 100, as it's also known. As we're doing this ascending triangle wedge here into this 7551. Now I'm recording this on a Friday, so the markets are closing shortly. It'll be Sunday night when the futures open again that I'll be interested in this. But for me, what is the market telling us? We've set a strong resistance level at 7551. The market's come up. We've found buyers come back in. Dirty little fake out. Just trapped all the buyers into that market. That's fine. Weren't interested in that test. And now we're potentially sort of having some higher lows here. If we continue wedging towards this 7551, then I think I'd be interested in taking a long position. Now, of course, as the market continues to wedge, that gives you a place for your stop loss. Let's say it comes down here, wedges back up. You might have two stop loss choices here. So Monday for me on the FTSE, looking for a break of this 7551 to attack these sort of post-coronavirus highs, or near enough anyway. And then looking all the way up here to see if we can start attacking this zone. So that is my plan for the FTSE. Let's get rid of the FTSE. Also like to have a look at the DAX, a German stock market that now has 40 companies in rather than 30, though I've not really noticed any sort of difference in behaviour that we thought we may have. We had a bit of an ascending wedge there, but it's sort of lost its sharpness, its steepness, if you like. But I think it helps just to come out again on this daily time frame and just have a look at where we are. compared to the FTSE. I mean, the FTSE, when it fell down here, is equivalent to sort of here. That's the sort of pre-corona highs, whereas the DAX has been much stronger, quite sideways, made a couple of all-time new highs, and then fell off with the obvious, I'll just make sure my face isn't over that face, with the obvious Russian-Ukraine tensions and the subsequent macroeconomic things with oil prices, energy prices, worries about other things as well that have come with that. So that's what's interesting at the moment. Now, I think with the DAX having a bit of a swing down here, we want to pull this Fibonacci from an obvious swing high to swing low. You can see we have challenged that 61.8 that for me is the most important Fibonacci retracement. And we've faked out, trapped the buyers up here and they've been suckered in, and then the market's gone short. Very, very difficult to avoid these fake outs at the moment, but we do have ways we can do that, and I'll hope to explain some of those in the coming week. So again, not the steepest wedge in the world. There's a little bit of an art to drawing these ascending wedges, but you can see what I'm talking about here. The DAX, I think, is a little bit tricky at the moment in this range. It's sort of halfway between. I mean, you can pull a shorter-term fib as well and go from here to here. Just have a look at where we are around that 61.8. But for me on the DAX, I think looking to buy down from this 109. It's a round number. Round numbers are very powerful. You also have a couple of few daily highs clustered around here as well. So for me, I think this is a bit of a buy zone down on the DAX, where you have this common pattern that I do like to trade, where you have resistance that becomes support. I would anticipate another support level down here, around this sort of 14,057 to 14,114. These are all the cash markets, they're not the futures markets. You'll find the equivalent cash markets on the 8cap platform, which is why we're looking at those. So that for me on the DAX is probably the biggest level of interest. Very bearish daily candle yesterday when we had some US weakness as well. I don't really want to get involved in all this sideways chop. I don't really want to get much lower into different time frames. So I'm interested in buying from this zone down here, I think if we see some further replacement. Moving over to the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the US 30. Again, let's get that longer term sense of perspective on those daily time frames. Just get enough data, one moment. 1,000 should very much do it. Daily, there we go. Okay, so this is where we have the contrast between the European markets and the US markets, where we have this big fall with the coronavirus and then the recovery is just absolutely crazy. As we'll see certainly on the NASDAQ when we have a look at that in the moment. That's just even more spectacular. But we've just gone a little bit sideways on the Dow here overall. We made those all-time highs, and now we're a little bit sideways. But we're not selling off dramatically, so we're looking for sort of revisions sort of back into the range, if you like. I mean, we do have these lower lows sort of trending down here, and we're in a very sort of broad descending channel here, and it looks like we've got that rejection. It's probably not the best one to draw, because you'd probably want to take that point as well. But it gives you a sort of broad sense of the way the market's going and whether we're going to see that change of behaviour or not, where the market is going to continue uptrending, because at some point we will see all-time highs again. Markets are very resilient. And you can see we're just testing that 50% Fibonacci retracement from this swing high to swing low. We've chopped around it quite a lot of times, so I don't give it too much weight. But a very bearish day yesterday on the Dow, but we're just laying this wick here that suggests we might see a bit of further upside. It's difficult. I think it's quite tricky on a daily time frame really to pick levels. We have the monthly pivot. I mean, down here at 179 with this resistance confluence. So that for me would be an interesting buy. Market finds resistance, market comes down, finds support on the monthly pivot. So I'm interested in looking to buy down here around this round number, around this 34,200, maybe slightly below. Give it, again, a bit of a margin of error because of the current level of volatility. So I'm going to be interested in buying down there as well. Double tops are of interest for major resistance as well to potentially short. Having a look at the market come up here, 372, and then bouncing back. So for me, for the Dow, I mean, it might be a bit of a challenge to clear all these lows here, but for me, I'm looking at a buy zone down here at 34,200, anticipating. Again, very common pattern I'd like to trade is where the market finds resistance, comes down, and it finds support. So that's going to interest me. Just have a quick look on the hourly time frame as well. Just see how that's looking. Nothing really changes for me on the hourly. It's still really this level that jumps out of me. I don't really want to get involved in this type of noise here. I mean, that was a very bearish hourly candle towards the close, 400 odd points. So it shows how the volatility is still here. Let's have a look at the NASDAQ, the US 100 Tech. Now, this was incredible over the pandemic. I mean, comparing it relative to the FTSE, I mean, look at that. That's the pandemic. And then look at this. Just incredible strength on the back of a lot of tech companies doing so fantastically well during the global lockdowns. And now we're just sort of coming off that honeymoon period at the moment. We're seeing a pretty large pullback, although this 13,065 is where the value has been found on the NASDAQ. But again, you're looking at little fake outs here where the market wants to just dip it, just go through the door. That's the analogy that's often used. So the market just wants to go through the door and see what's on the other side. And on the other side, lots of suckers who've probably got long and are going to get themselves in trouble. To be fair, I was probably long on the NASDAQ. I managed to get long on the way up on this fantastic rally, but around here it's been quite bitty. So not something I'm really interested in. Now the question is, where are we? Are we convinced there's a downtrending opportunity on the NASDAQ? I'm not convinced really. I mean, the index markets tend to go up when they go down, so I have a long bias, but this is certainly a level of interest. Again, reoccurring pattern. What becomes resistance? We're anticipating coming support. We have the monthly pivot down here as well. So we pretty much have a buy zone down here that I'm interested in looking at for this month. Probably finesse that a little bit more as time goes on. But I am interested in getting long from here, I think. We've had 3 negative days today. We're currently on the low on the Friday afternoon. Looks like we're heading for a weak close. But I think on a daily time frame, the area of interest is coming down here and looking for that long down there as well around that 14,361 level. Going to move on slightly left field and have a quick look at Bitcoin in a moment. I'm not so bothered about the S&P at the moment. I don't want to waste your time looking at markets that I don't think there's particularly good levels on. I do have a reasonable amount of Bitcoin in a wallet unleveraged. I have traded the CFD as well. And one of the reasons I'm a big fan of 8cap is you've got the 12-point spread on Bitcoin, which, you know, for the volatility is pretty incredible. Nice executions as well. And you can see I've only just looked at Bitcoin today. It's the first time actually, and this descending, these trend lines that I drew actually found support on there. I would never have traded that. It's easy for me to say, you know, oh, look how it's gone. But, you know, I'd have been more inclined to have got long probably on this type of level here, 45,600. So for me, there's not a great deal to do on Bitcoin. I want to see it challenge the 48,200 level. If it ends up putting pressure on this level, then I'll be interested in seeing if it opens up this 52,080. That's something that will sort of interest me a little bit more. So I'm interested to see if Bitcoin wants to challenge that 48,200 again. And then I think that'll be an area of interest for me to get long if it wants to continue to retrace, because it was in this descending wedge for a while and one side was going to break and eventually it broke up, and now we can just see we're sort of chopping in a bit of a sideways range. One market I do currently have a trade on that I'm going to be carrying into the weekend is cable, which is the pound dollar currency pair. It's not looking quite as clever as it was yesterday, unfortunately, of NFP today, but we're still in this ascending wedge. My logic is basically, let me just get this chart properly on the screen. My logic is essentially a break back above this one spot 31616 level. You can see the market has done that, and then we've come back down. We've broken back up. Wasn't interested in that. And then we came back up and started to put pressure back on this level. So I've actually got long just above there. My stop's all the way below here. So it's just a case of whether we can hold this ascending wedge. If we start breaking below this low back here from the 29th of March, then I may question that trade. But we'll see what happens. It's got plenty of room to breathe on the daily time frame. It's a longer term swing trade. So I'm long, I think, just about 131640 or something similar to that. I'm not exactly sure. But we'll see what happens with that market as well. So yeah, mainly having a look at the index markets. There's a lot of pullback levels that are quite interesting across the board as well that I think we're going to be interested in looking at. Bitcoin, we're looking to see a little bit more bullishness, and we may well see a break long, and cable or an existing trade we're going to have a look at long as well. But I'll probably, by the time I speak to you again on Wednesday, I'm going to be having quite a few trades placed from Monday and Tuesday, so hopefully we'll be able to look at some live trades and why I'm actually taking those positions and how I manage them, and we'll see where we are. So hopefully you found this analysis pretty valuable. Until next time.